Welcome back to PodX. All right, let's jump into a deep dive all about the Mughal Empire. Perfect for someone who's new to this whole period of history.
Yeah, definitely.
And we're going to be using some excerpts from history textbooks as we have the main players, major defining moments, just all the good stuff.
All the juicy stuff.
Yeah, all the juicy stuff. So to start us off, before we even get into the Mughals, we have to understand what even came before them.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's funny how a new chapter in history is really like a continuation of an older story. So before we get to the Mughals, we kind of have to rewind back to the decline of the Mongol Empire and, what happened after, all that power vacuum that was left in Central Asia.
So we're talking 14th century-ish?
Yeah, 14th century. Think after Genghis Khan's massive empire.
Right.
It starts to kind of break apart.
Right.
And then you have these figures like Timur. Yeah. You might know him as Tamerlane. He was this Turco-Mongol leader.
Yeah.
And he was hungry for conquest.
It swept through Persia, Central Asia, even did this brief but impactful invasion of India in 1398. So although his empire was short-lived, it definitely shook things up. And his descendants, they were called the Timurids. They continued to be influential. And they were known for sponsoring art and culture. So cities like, Samarkand, Herat, they became centers of learning, creativity, the whole 9 yards.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the Timurids, they set the stage, but then their influence eventually waned. So was that when the Mughals stepped in?
Not quite. There's another layer to this whole story. So as the Timurids decline, these other empires, they saw an opportunity, to kind of flex their muscles, expand their power. You got the Ottomans in the West, pushing into Eastern Europe, Persia. And you have the Safavids establishing their own rule in Persia.
Okay.
So now you've got this three-way power struggle going on.
Yeah.
Everyone wants to be top dog.
Like a recipe for conflict.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
So how did the Mughals even emerge from this whole situation? Well, I mean, even the term Mughal is interesting because these rulers, they actually saw themselves as the Timurid dynasty. They were proud of their Mongol Turkic heritage, but culturally they were very much Persianized. It's they took this legacy of conquest and empire building from their Mongol ancestors, but they expressed it through a Persian cultural lens.
So it's this mix of influences that's shaping their identity.
Exactly.
Okay, so then Babur, right, the founder of the Mughal Empire, this is where he enters the scene.
Exactly. And Babur's story is anything but straightforward. I mean, this guy inherited a small kingdom in Central Asia when he was 11 years old.
11.
Oh
my gosh.
Talk about being thrown into the deep end.
Wow.
Right. He spent a lot of his early life just trying to gain control of this city, Samarkand. Super important city on the Silk Road. He won it, lost it, won it again. I mean, talk about a trial by fire.
Yeah.
But he eventually establishes a base in Kabul.
Okay.
And that becomes his, springboard to India.
So it sounds like he learned about leadership kind of the hard way, right? Having to deal with all these challenges from such a young age.
Definitely. It wasn't handed to him. He had to earn it. So imagine you're Babur ruling Kabul, right?
Yeah.
You start hearing these whispers of discontent brewing in India, which at this time is being ruled by the Lodi dynasty. And these whispers are coming from Afghan nobles. They are not happy with the current sultan, Ibrahim Lodi.
Yeah.
And they're starting to see Babur as a potential solution to their problems.
So it's almost like they're hey, Babur, we need a regime change.
Yeah. I mean, that's putting it simply. But you get the idea.
Right.
They saw him as a strong leader who could overthrow Lodi and maybe, be a little bit more favorable to their interests. And it's important to keep in mind, during this time period, alliances and rivalries were constantly shifting.
Constantly in flux.
Totally.
Yeah. So did Babur just jump at this chance to conquer India?
I mean, he definitely wasn't one to back down from a challenge, but he was also a complex figure. He wasn't just a warrior. The sources we have, they paint this picture of him as this really cultivated man. He loved learning, poetry, even gardening. He's actually the one who introduced the concept of formal gardens to India, inspired by Persian designs.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So he's bringing beauty brains to the battlefield.
Totally.
So what were some of his defining moments when it comes to military achievements?
Well, I mean, his conquest of India is marked by several key battles, each significant in their own way, but the big one, the most important one, was at the First Battle of Panipat in 1526. This is where Babur goes head-to-head with Ibrahim Lodi, the Sultan of Delhi.
Okay.
And Babur, even though he's got a smaller army, he's got a few tricks up his sleeve.
Like what?
He's using innovative military tactics, like he's got gunpowder weaponry. He's using something called the Rumi method of warfare. So the Rumi method, this is a style influenced by the Ottomans. It involves like coordinated movements of cavalry and artillery. So he positions his cannons strategically, uses them just to devastating effect against Lodi's forces, who were still relying on more traditional warfare techniques. It was a decisive victory for Babur. And it marks the real beginning of the Mughal Empire.
So that was like the turning point.
It's the turning point.
But not the end of his challenges, I'm assuming.
Oh, definitely not the end of the challenges. He still has all these rivals who want to challenge his new authority.
Right.
And one of the biggest ones was Rana Sanga.
Okay.
This is the Rajput ruler who had actually initially invited Babur to India.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Talk about a plot twist, right?
Yeah.
So they end up clashing at the Battle of Kanwa in 1527. And Babur, to kind of secure victory, he strategically declares this battle a jihad. So he's rallying his troops against the Rajput forces.
So even though Rana Sanga was the one who invited him, he ended up having to fight him?
Exactly. And it shows just how volatile the political landscape was back then.
Yeah.
Alliances could shift on a dime based on, whatever the perceived threats or opportunities were at the moment. Babur had to be constantly adapting and strategizing to keep that power.
Wow.
He goes on to secure victories at the Battle of Shanderi in 1528 against Medini Ray, and then the Battle of Gagra in 1529. That's against the Eastern Afghans.
So just constant wave after wave of having to prove himself.
Yeah, he doesn't get a break.
Yeah.
But ultimately, his arrival, it marked a significant shift in India's history, because the Mughal Empire, even though it had this rocky start, it's going to go on to become one of the most powerful and influential empires in the world.
And he only ruled for like 4 years in India.
That's 4 years. It's pretty remarkable when you think about it.
Crazy.
But of course, the story of the Mughals doesn't end there. It's really just the beginning.
Yeah.
So next we'll dive into the challenges and the triumphs of his successors.
Okay. So, Babur, he lays the foundation for this incredible empire. But, I mean, empires rarely have, like, smooth transitions, right? So what happened after he died?
Right. Well, I mean, you got to keep in mind, he leaves behind this pretty new empire, surrounded by rivals and facing internal divisions. So it falls to his son, Humayun, to navigate this whole tricky landscape.
Yeah.
And he inherited what some historians have called a rickety empire.
A rickety empire.
Yeah, full of potential,
Right.
but also incredibly fragile.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I can imagine the pressure was immense, especially with like the whole Timurid tradition of dividing the empire among the brothers.
Right.
Didn't that create a lot of internal conflict?
Absolutely. Humayun had to constantly deal with his brothers, Kamran, Hindal, and Askari. Each one of them controlled these significant territories. And they had their own ambitions, so it was this constant balancing act for him. Trying to consolidate power while also managing these rivalries within his own family. And then, as if that wasn't enough, he faces a new challenge in the form of Sher Shah Suri.
Sher Shah Suri. I mean, our sources describe him as brilliant military strategist and this like incredibly efficient ruler.
Yeah.
Makes you kind of wonder, like, if it weren't for him, would the Mughal Empire have even continued?
Yeah, it's a great question, because Sher Shah definitely changed the course of events. And he wasn't just some, upstart warlord. This guy was a shrewd leader. He understood warfare and administration. I mean, he had started his career serving under the Lodi dynasty.
Oh, okay.
Right. Worked his way up, showed everyone his skills on the battlefield, even carved out his own territory before going after the Mughals.
And he defeated Humayun twice.
Yeah, not once, but twice.
What led to those defeats?
Well, the first big clash was the Battle of Chausa in 1539. Humayun's forces were camped out, near the Ganges River, facing off against Sher Shah's army.
Okay.
And they were both kind of trying to, outmaneuver each other. But Humayun, maybe he misjudged the situation. He actually tries to negotiate a truce. He sends his ambassador over to Sher Shah, hoping to, find some kind of peaceful resolution.
So he maybe underestimated Sher Shah's ambition?
Perhaps. It's possible. Sher Shah, he was a master of deception. He agrees to the truce. He even promises to retreat and allow Humayun to keep Bengal and Bihar as provinces under his rule.
Oh, wow.
But it was a trick.
Okay.
As soon as Humayun's troops, lower their guard, Sher Shah launches a surprise attack, just completely routs the Mughal army.
Wow. So the first defeat is like misplaced trust.
Yeah.
And strategic cunning on Sher Shah's part.
Right.
Okay, what about the second battle?
That happened just a year later, the Battle of Kanauj in 1540. Humayun, he was determined to get his territories back. So he puts together a new army and goes after Sher Shah.
Okay.
But he seems to have rushed into things, made some tactical errors. And Sher Shah, who's this seasoned commander, he takes advantage of those mistakes. Mughal army suffers another crushing defeat. Humayun has to flee for his life. And this marks the beginning of the Sur Empire. Sher Shah takes over a good chunk of North India.
So Humayun's defeated, he's exiled.
Yep.
Pretty low point for the Mughal Empire at this point.
Yeah, a low point for sure.
So what's happening while Sher Shah is, consolidating power?
Right. Well, Humayun, during this time, he spends some time in Sindh.
Okay.
That's where his son, the future emperor, Akbar, is born.
Okay.
And eventually he goes to Persia, where he finds refuge and support from Shah Tahmasp of the Safavid dynasty.
Okay.
It was a humbling experience, no doubt.
Yeah.
But it gave him a chance to regroup, build up his strength, and come up with a plan to get back in the game.
Right.
Meanwhile, Sher Shah, he's not just sitting around, conquering stuff. He's turning out to be this amazing administrator. He puts these, groundbreaking reforms into place that have a lasting impact on India.
So he's like a ruler who gets it.
Yeah.
True power isn't just about the military, it's about efficient and fair governance.
Yeah, exactly. He understood that to have a stable and prosperous empire, he needed a solid administrative foundation. So he divides the empire into these smaller units called sarkars, and those were further divided into parganas.
Okay.
So it created this more organized and manageable structure, allowed for better control and communication across his vast territory.
So he's streamlining the administration.
Yeah.
Making it more efficient, responsive to, local needs.
Precisely. And it doesn't stop there. He puts in a revenue system that's based on land classification and crop rates, using a standardized measurement called the Sikandari Das.
Okay.
And this system brings some clarity and fairness to the tax collection process, reduces the potential for corruption that was pretty common in empires.
Right.
Sher Shah also reforms the currency. He introduces the silver rupaya and the copper dam. And these coins, they stay in circulation for centuries. It's a real testament to his vision. He wanted this unified, standardized economic system.
Yeah. His reforms, they sound super forward-thinking, almost modern.
Yeah.
Did they have a long-term impact on India?
Absolutely. They laid the groundwork for many of the administrative systems that later Mughal rulers would adopt and improve, especially Akbar.
Right.
And he wasn't just about, bureaucracy and stuff. He was also a builder. He left behind all these impressive structures.
Oh.
Like the Purana Kila in Delhi, his magnificent mausoleum in Sasaram, and the Rohtas Fort. It's a UNESCO World Heritage Site now.
Wow. So he's not just conquering, he's administering.
Yeah.
But he's also, beautifying and fortifying.
Exactly. He gets it. You got to project power and legitimacy through these amazing buildings and smart urban planning. He also, encouraged learning in the arts. Works like the Padmavat and the Tarikh-e-Shahi, which is basically a history of his reign. They were finished during his time. And can't forget about his infrastructure improvements. He revamped the Grand Trunk Road. That's that ancient trade route that connected the east and west parts of his empire.
Right.
He built sarais, or rest houses, along highways, to make trade and travel easier. He really wanted to see economic growth and good connections across the empire.
So it sounds like his reign was a time of, real progress and consolidation for North India.
It was.
What about Humayun, though? Did he ever, reclaim his lost empire?
He did, but it was a tough road back. After about 15 years in exile, he manages to reconquer Kandahar and Kabul with the help of his Persian allies.
Wow.
And he marches back into India, defeats the successors of Sher Shah, and takes back the Mughal throne in 1555.
It's a real comeback story.
It is.
But our sources say that his return to power didn't last very long.
Sadly, no. Just a year after getting back on the throne, Humayun dies. It's 1556. Leaves the Mughal Empire in a tough spot once again. But his death opens the door for one of the most famous figures in Indian history, his son Akbar.
Akbar. Now that's a name you hear throughout history.
Oh, yeah. He is considered by many to be the greatest of the Mughal emperors.
Right.
And for good reason. His reign was a golden age for the empire, a time of incredible expansion, a blossoming of culture, and some seriously innovative administration.
So it seems like he learned a lot from his dad's struggles and from Sher Shah's successes.
Yeah, it seems that way.
But before we go into Akbar's amazing reign, maybe we should stop and think about all the problems he inherited.
That's a good point. I mean, to really understand what Akbar accomplished, you got to understand the situation he walked into. He was a young ruler facing all these internal and external threats. The empire is still divided, powerful enemies were all around,
Yeah.
and the memory of Humayun's losses and Sher Shah's rule, they were still fresh in everyone's minds.
So he took on a lot of responsibility.
Yeah, we did. But Akbar, even though he was young, he had this mix of ambition, smarts, and adaptability that would not only help him survive, but thrive in the face of all those challenges.
Okay, so we've got this, teenage emperor inheriting a pretty fragile empire. Must have been a lot of pressure.
Yeah, it's tough to imagine the weight on his shoulders. I mean, he was only 13 when he took the throne. Most kids that age are worried about, homework and stuff, not ruling a massive empire.
Yeah, totally different kind of responsibility.
Yeah.
So how did he even manage in those early years?
Well, he was lucky to have a pretty skilled and loyal regent at his side, Bahram Khan. He was a seasoned military guy, served Humayun faithfully, basically became Akbar's guardian, and for all intents and purposes ruled the empire during those first few years, guided the young emperor and fended off challenges from all sorts of factions.
Our sources talk about this particularly dangerous rival, Himu. He declared himself the ruler, right?
Yeah.
Posed a real threat to Akbar's reign.
Yeah, Himu's an interesting character. Came from humble beginnings, but rose through the ranks, became a powerful commander under the Sur dynasty. Ambitious guy, saw his chance amidst the chaos after Humayun's death. He actually captured Delhi and Agra, pushed Akbar and Bahram Khan to the brink.
Sounds like a real trial by fire for Akbar, even with Bahram Khan's help. How did they deal with that?
They confronted Himu at the Second Battle of Panipat in 1556, just a few months after Akbar became emperor. It was a make-or-break moment for the Mughal Empire. The battle was fierce, and at first, Himu's forces were winning, but then something happened that changed everything.
What was it?
Himu, he was leading the charge and got hit by an arrow, fell unconscious. His army, seeing their leader down, they panicked, and the Mughal forces routed them. It's crazy to think how one seemingly random event could have such a huge impact on history.
Wow, what a close call. That victory at Panipat must really solidified Akbar's position, even though he was so young. What about Bahram Khan, though? Did he keep acting as regent?
Bahram Khan, even though he was loyal and effective, he started to amass his own power. Appointed his own people to important positions, made decisions without even talking to Akbar. This caused some resentment among the other nobles, and Akbar, who was now in his late teens and getting more confident, he saw it as a threat.
So you have this power struggle brewing between the emperor and his regent. How did Akbar handle that?
Well, he did something pretty clever. He issued a farman, a royal decree, dismissing Bahram Khan. Ordered him to go on a pilgrimage to Mecca, a way to get him out of court without resorting to violence or imprisonment.
Smart move. Neutralize a potential rival, but still show him some respect. Did Bahram Khan just accept that?
At first, he resisted, even started a small rebellion. But he was forced to give in to Akbar's demands. Sadly, on his way to Mecca, he was assassinated by some Afghan nobles. They probably saw him as an obstacle to their own ambitions. It just shows you how dangerous court politics were back then. Loyalties could shift quickly, and even the most powerful people weren't safe from betrayal.
It's a reminder that power could be so fragile. So with Bahram Khan gone, Akbar was finally in control. What was his approach to ruling this vast and complex empire?
Akbar's reign is really all about three things: consolidating his power, expanding the empire, and implementing reforms. He spent the next few decades putting down rebellions, growing the Mughal Empire to a size it had never been before, and putting in place some innovative administrative and social changes. He wanted a powerful, unified India, and he went after it with military might, clever diplomacy, and a willingness to embrace the diversity of his empire.
Okay, let's start with his expansionist policies. Where did he focus his military campaigns?
Akbar had big ambitions. He wanted a pan-Indian empire, bringing all these different regions under Mughal control. He started with Malwa, a strategically important area, defeated the ruler Baz Bahadur, and took over. Then he turned his attention to Gondwana, another key region ruled by the brave Rani Durgavati. She fought hard against the Mughals but was defeated and sadly killed in battle.
Sounds like he faced some pretty tough opponents, but he was determined to expand. Was it all about military conquest, though?
Not exactly. Akbar was also a brilliant strategist and a diplomat. He knew that brute force alone wouldn't create a lasting empire. He had to build alliances, integrate different people, and establish a government that would ensure stability and prosperity. A prime example of his diplomatic skills was how he dealt with the Rajputs, the powerful warrior clans of Rajasthan.
The Rajputs were known for being fiercely independent and having amazing warriors. How did Akbar manage to bring them into the Mughal Empire?
He realized that trying to conquer them by force would be a long and expensive process, and it might not even work in the long run. So he offered them a choice: join the Mughal Empire willingly or face his army. Those who chose to ally with him were treated well, given high positions in his court, and allowed to keep some control over their own lands.
A classic carrot and stick approach, but he took it a step further, right? He solidified these alliances through marriage.
You got it. His most famous marriage was to Johabai, a Rajput princess. This wasn't just a political move. It showed his commitment to creating a more inclusive and unified empire where people from different cultures and religions could live together.
It was a bold move, marrying into a group known for resisting the Mughals. Did all the Rajputs accept his offer?
Not everyone. One famous exception was Rana Pratap. He became a symbol of Rajput resistance, refused to acknowledge Akbar's authority, and kept fighting for independence. Their most famous battle was the Battle of Haldigati in 1576. Rana Pratap was defeated, but he never surrendered and continued to fight a guerrilla war against the Mughals.
What a symbol of defiance against all odds. It's interesting that Akbar seemed to respect his courage.
He did. Akbar even offered Rana Pratap a place in his court, but he refused, unwilling to compromise his principles. That Akbar was willing to make such an offer to someone he had defeated says a lot about his pragmatism and his understanding that different viewpoints were important in his empire.
So Akbar's expansion wasn't just about military power. It was a complex mix of conquest, diplomacy, and integration. How far did his empire actually reach?
It was vast. He conquered Gujarat, gaining control of the important port of Surat. This opened up new trade routes and connected the Mughal Empire to the rest of the world. He also took Bengal, ending the last Afghan kingdom in the north and consolidating his control over that wealthy region. He even campaigned in the northwest, securing those areas against the Uzbeks and other rivals. By the time he died, the Mughal Empire was the biggest it had ever been, covering almost the entire Indian subcontinent.
That's amazing, especially considering what the empire was like when he took over. But ruling such a huge and diverse area takes more than just military strength. How did he manage to administer this sprawling empire?
Akbar was more than just a conqueror. He was a builder of systems. He knew that having a well-organized and efficient administration was key to the empire's survival. One of his most important innovations was the Mansabdari system, a unique hierarchy for the military and administration. Officials were given ranks, called mansabs, based on their status, their salary, and how many soldiers they had under their command.
So it was a way to organize and reward officials based on what they contributed to the empire.
Exactly. It was designed to be a meritocracy, where promotions were based on how well you performed and how loyal you were, regardless of your background or religion. Akbar wanted the best and brightest people serving the empire, no matter what their faith or ethnicity was.
That's a surprisingly progressive approach for a ruler in that time. And this ties into another remarkable thing about Akbar's reign: his policy of religious tolerance. It seems almost unheard of for a ruler who's building an empire to be so accepting of different faiths.
It really was groundbreaking. Akbar, maybe because of his Sufi upbringing and his conversations with religious scholars from different backgrounds, developed a deep respect for all religions. He knew that religious harmony was essential for the stability of his diverse empire.
So it wasn't just a personal belief, but also a smart way to govern.
Precisely. He abolished the jizya, which was a tax that discriminated against non-Muslims. This sent a strong message of inclusivity. He encouraged people of different faiths to talk to each other, even invited scholars from various religions to his court to debate and share their knowledge. He even appointed Hindus to high government positions, breaking with centuries of tradition. He truly believed in creating a society where people of all faiths could live and work together peacefully.
Wow, those policies were way ahead of their time. It's like he was trying to create a modern pluralistic society back in the 16th century.
He was a visionary ruler, ahead of his time in many ways. He even tried to create a new faith, the Dini-Ahi, which combined elements of Islam, Hinduism, and Zoroastrianism. It didn't really catch on, but it shows his vision of a society united by shared values, not divided by religious differences.
His efforts to bring people of different faiths together are truly remarkable. But we haven't talked about his other reforms. How did he handle the complicated issue of taxes, especially in such a vast and diverse empire?
Akbar's revenue system built upon what Sher Shah Suri had already put in place. He standardized land measurement using the Ilahi Gaj, which was slightly smaller than Sher Shah's Sikandari Gaj. He also implemented a complex system for classifying land based on how productive it was, taking into account things like soil quality, irrigation, and what crops were grown.
So he was trying to make taxes more fair and efficient?
Exactly. His most famous innovation was the Zabti system, which is sometimes called Todar Mal's Bandobast, named after his brilliant finance minister, Raja Todar Mal. This system involved carefully assessing how productive the land was, setting specific tax rates for different crops, and requiring 1/3 of the harvest to be paid in cash.
So it wasn't random, it was based on real data and careful evaluation.
Yes, and it was meant to ensure a steady flow of money for the government and make things more predictable for the farmers. However, Akbar wasn't inflexible. He understood that different regions might need different approaches. So other systems like Batai, which involved sharing the crops, Kunkut, which was based on estimation, and Nasak, which used past tax records, were also used in various parts of the empire.
Sounds like he was a pragmatist, willing to adapt his policies to suit the needs of his diverse people. We've talked a lot about Akbar's political and administrative achievements, but what about his influence on art and culture?
Akbar's reign saw a real blossoming of Mughal architecture, miniature painting, and literature. This shows how much he supported the arts and how deeply he appreciated them. Think of architectural wonders like the Agra Fort, a grand red sandstone fortress that was both a palace and a military base. Or Fatehpur Sikri, his magnificent new capital city with its incredible blend of Hindu and Islamic styles. It has iconic structures like the Jama Masjid, the Buland Darwaza, and the beautiful palaces built for Jodhabai and Birbal.
Those are truly iconic structures. They represent the grandeur of the Mughal Empire. What about painting and literature?
Akbar's court was a hub for artists and writers. Mughal miniature painting, which combined Persian and Indian techniques, reached a peak of sophistication during his reign. He supported talented artists like Mir Sayyid Ali, Abdus Samad, and Daswant, whose beautiful works capture the opulence of the Mughal court and the energy of Akbar's rule.
It's incredible to think of these masterpieces being created in the middle of all the political and military happenings.
It shows Akbar's vision for a cosmopolitan and culturally rich empire. He also encouraged the translation of important Hindu texts like the Ramayana and the Mahabharata into Persian, making these epic stories accessible to more people. His court historian, Abul Fazl, wrote the Akbarnama, a detailed record of Akbar's reign that gives us valuable insights into his personality, his policies, and what life was like back then. Akbar also supported poets like Faizi, his close friend and advisor, and Birbal, who was famous for his wit and wisdom.
It sounds like Akbar's reign was a golden age for Mughal art and literature. He was a patron, an innovator, and a unifier, leaving behind a legacy that still fascinates us today.
You've put it perfectly. Akbar's reign was a period of incredible change for the Mughal Empire, and his influence on India's history, culture, and identity is undeniable. He strengthened Mughal rule, expanded the empire to its largest size, and put in place reforms that shaped the course of Indian history. He was a military genius, but also a shrewd diplomat and a visionary leader who understood the importance of inclusivity and cultural exchange.
This has been an amazing journey through the early years of the Mughal Empire. We've seen how these ambitious rulers, from Babur to Akbar, shaped the fate of this incredible empire. We've explored the challenges they faced, the battles they fought, and the legacies they left behind.
And maybe the most important thing we can learn from this is that history isn't just a bunch of dates and names. It's a story of human ambition, struggles, and the power of ideas. The Mughal Empire, with all its complexities and contradictions, offers a rich tapestry of human experience that continues to fascinate and teach us centuries later.
Thank you for taking us through this fascinating chapter of history. It's amazing to think how events that happened so long ago still shape how we understand the world today.
It's been my pleasure. I encourage everyone to keep exploring the world of the Mughals, dig deeper into the lives of these incredible people and the events that shaped their time. There's always more to discover, and the journey through history is truly rewarding.
I think our listeners are ready to graduate from newbies to Mughal experts after this deep dive.
Couldn't agree more. And who knows, maybe we'll revisit this fascinating period again sometime.
Until then, keep exploring, keep questioning, keep those history books open. We'll see you in the next video. Stay tuned.